there's these opportunities to talk about vocations to, kids in school and everything like that. And it's funny because the first thing I always say to kids when I talk to them about vocations is I was like, I was just like you, and I never thought about, when I was sitting in your desk, I never thought once about being a priest. And I kind of just tell them, I was just like, it was not even on my radar, just to let them know that, you never know. I mean, there are some guys that said, I wanted to be a priest since I was in first grade, but I just wasn't one of those guys. But knowing that people are out there like that too, I mean, that's fine. It just definitely wasn't my experience. And when I was thinking about, just kind of to frame it in perspective, when I was thinking about going to the seminary or being a priest, I had a great girlfriend. I was in the midst of getting the annulment with the church. I had a job, the job that I have loved the most in my entire life. I loved my job. I had no reason to leave. Everything was kind of going up. There was a lot of room for me to build in that job because it was kind of a newer program. So I had a lot going for me at the time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like, I'm going through this annulment. I'm dating somebody who, the next step would probably be, would be getting married. And so there was that difficulty of, realizing like, oh, well, how in the world am I going to go to seminary with all these things going on? A lot of people have debt and things like that. So everybody's got a different snapshot of their life, and we all have problems. And I was thinking none of this stuff will ever be resolved. How in the world, how do you break up with a girl and say that you're going to go be a priest and then, go through this whole annulment, get rid of a bunch of your stuff, tell people you're going to quit. I coached a team of 25, 26 kids, and coaching is a little different than teaching. Often you graduate to the next grade and you get a new teacher. I'd been coaching a lot of these kids for 5 years, and I see a lot of them 3 or 4 times a week. I traveled with them to different states for competition, national competitions, and those kids felt like my kids, and a lot of them still do, and I was like, I don't know how to do this, and so it's like eventually you kind of ask God, like, help me out with this. But things amazingly start, I got the annulment, and so the church annulled my marriage, and that gave me some peace of mind. And then I started praying about, like, God, if I leave, please find, I can't leave these kids unless I know that they're going to be taken care of. And then my best friend ended up, a guy I went to Baylor with, ended up taking over my job for me. So my best friend becomes the head coach of the team. And it was just like, all of a sudden things, if you start taking the steps forward, it's amazing that what God will make fall into place. So things, I ended up breaking up with the girl I was seeing, and things just started kind of moving further in that direction, just amazingly. They just kept moving. And of course, it gets scarier at that point as you go. And I think eventually you end up having, and then eventually somehow, some way, you finish this giantly long application, and somehow you're here. You find yourself here. And I think I'd kind of sum it up by, I was in my ministry this year, because we all have an off-hill ministry that we do, and mine's at the Benedictine Nursing Center. And so we work with a lot of folks that have dementia and Alzheimer's and many people and different, but mostly older folks. And I work with a man that, he fought in World War II, had a Purple Heart, shot, grenade, shrapnel. One of these unbelievable people, 94 years old, just this unbelievable man. Reminds me of my own grandfather, and, just wonderful guy. Lost his wife about a year ago. And I remember I walked through the door one day and I saw him doing sort of like a word search or something. I was like, oh, you doing a word search there? And he said something like, oh, I just get so lonesome sometimes. I just need something to pass the time. And there's these moments that you ask yourself, God, why am I giving this up? What if I want to get married? There's all these things I want to do, and I'm giving up so much to sort of follow you and help people and stuff. But it was like, that was one of those vocational moments of clarity. And it's a process, like many people say. You're still discerning in the seminary. Some days are bad, some days are good. But that was one of those days that really was a vocational moment of clarity when he said, I just get so lonely sometime, and I'd realize, like in a flash, I just had this perspective of like, him and his wife had 9 kids. He has a family. He has a wonderful family, and they do take care of him. But you know what? They have families of their own, and they have to take kids to school and get them fed, and and kids have to go to sleep, and so even though they love him and take care of him, they're not really available to him every day or on a regular basis. And at that moment, I sat there and I realized that I was like, I'm available. And our president rector said one time that the priesthood is about being radically available to people. And at that moment, I really felt it. And I realized that, some days you're like, I don't even want to go to ministry. I'm tired. I want to take a nap or something like that. But then you go, and then, you get to meet with this amazing man that fought for our country and raised this amazing family and stuff like that. But now, at this point in his life, he's pretty lonely. But then all of a sudden I was there and he wasn't lonely. And he really loves it when I come and visit. And I really love to go visit with him. And I realized, I was like, man, this is why, a lot of people, oh, well, why do priests have to be celibate? Or why do you have to be, and it's tough. I mean, because we discern that call. It's not like people, a lot of times people feel bad for us, but we all come to the seminary knowing what we're giving up. We don't come here and then all of a sudden find out, oh, wait a second. Are you saying that celibacy? Oh, you did not tell me that before I got here. That was not in the, full disclosure that I signed. And we know it. We discern that before we get here. So people don't have to feel bad for us. We know that that's a part of it. And then when you have moments like that where you're visiting with somebody and you realize that, well, I don't have kids that I have to be back, that need to be picked up from school or need to be fed. My wife's not home waiting for me. I just don't have that thing because I've committed my life to make it available for these people, like what Pope Francis would talk about, the marginalized, the lonely. And sometimes we don't even think of a guy like that being sort of marginalized, but they're there, and there's just millions of people like that. And he's in a good situation, and he's really lonely. But, there's people in a way worse situation that are lonely. And it's just like, and that's, I think, what I'm here for, and all my brothers are here. It's just like we realize that there's a greater need there. And God just sort of gives you the grace to be able to, a lot of people kind of say to you, I just don't think I could do that. And it's like, I don't think I could do that either. But I think God allowed me to do that. If it was me, then I don't think I could have done it. But I think all of us up here, I think all my brothers would probably agree with, everything good you see in me is God. It's not Peter or Scott or John or whoever you're talking to. And eventually we just kind of say yes to it. And then God sort of does the rest of it like that. I realize how hard it might look because I think, I was there, like I was in that same spot before where, never thought of it. Wow, that looks really hard. And, and I don't know, but eventually he just kind of makes you ready. I thought of this analogy shortly after I'd had that kind of moment of clarity one time about how, a lot of times we're sort of, Mother Teresa talked about us being like a pencil in God's hand, sort of like these instruments for God. And the way I like to think of it is sort of, let's say there's a lot of work to do. God's got to dig this gigantic hole. So he goes out into the shed of where all his tools are, all the us's of the world. And, some days we're in a bad way. We're just not, we're not really feeling up to it. So some days God walks in the shed and he finds a rusty shovel. And that's the shape that you're in that day. Other days he walks in there and he finds a bulldozer. And it's just like, and I think it's the disposition that we give to God is the work that he can do with us that day. He'll use it. He'll use the tool no matter what it is. So whether you have a big hole to dig with a rusty shovel or with a bulldozer, one of them is going to get more work done. And I think it's up to our cooperation. That's maybe the only thing that we really contribute. It's like, okay, today I feel like I can do a lot. Like, God, I'm all yours. And that's the day he sees a bulldozer and then boom, a lot of work gets done. But even when it's the rusty shovel day, he still gets work done.